Hello there, and welcome back for another edition of the Golden Age of DC Comics, 365 Days, where I take this well-loved coffee table book given to me by one of my best friends about 2 decades ago. It's been surfing my coffee table ever since. It's a great source of conversation, and I thought, this is going to make great YouTube content. So I'm going to use this book for its intended purpose. I'm going to crack it open, come to today's date. We're going to look at some comic book art. We're going to read the blurb, and then we're going to talk about comic books for a few moments. And guess what? We're going to talk about comic books every day for the rest of the year. 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Tune in tomorrow and find out who we're talking about when we crack open the book. So let's just start how I usually start. I like to show off the book a little bit and give respect to its producers. This is an Abrhams 2004 hardcover coffee table book. You can find a link in the description. I believe last time I checked, it's for under $8 for this very book. It's going to look great on your coffee table, and it's a great gift for any comic book fan too. It was written and curated by Les Daniels, Chip Kidd, and Geoff Spear. So let's crack the book open and let's get to it. Today is June the 3rd, and how are you doing today? I hope you're doing awesome, and I hope that you can that you know that the purpose of good fiction is to spirit you away from this world's problems, because we're so mired in the daily life and what's going on in the world and in our country and outside of our country. And, just for a few moments, every human needs this for their imagination to spirit them away and to give them respite from these world's problems with some adventure, some fiction, something fantastic, literally fantasy. That's where the fantastic comes from. So, it's June the 3rd. This is art by Bob Brown. This is from House of Mystery, number 1, December 1951, January 1952. Was I man or monster? Dun, dun, dun. Behold. Yes, that's Bob Brown's art. In this streamlined 20th century of wonder drugs, jet planes, and the atom, can such things happen? Can fiction become dread fact? Can a decent law-abiding doctor turn demon? Cynical, aren't you? Ridiculous, you say? Then read this confession of tragedy and terror, told by the man who is destined to live it before you make up your mind. Behold, he has turned into a monster. Let's read the blurb and get to it. In the early 1950s, superheroes seemed out of fashion, and one new genre was on the rise: the horror comic. This was not exactly comfortable territory for DC, which had long since set down guidelines intended to discourage disturbing material. Outrage, disturbing material. It's always been provocative, and it's always sold, and it's always gotten attention. And there's always people with standards to make sure that that doesn't become the normal. When the company decided to go along with the trend, a restrained approach seemed most appropriate. This tale from the premiere issue of DC's first horror comic is ultra-conservative, an unacknowledged adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1886. All right, let's look at the art just real quick once again. And a little sneak preview for tomorrow. And that's what we have for today. We're going to talk about Jekyll and Hyde for a second. One of my favorite uses of Jekyll and Hyde came from an early 21st century book called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The comic, not the 2003 film, but the 1999. It was it was written by Alan Moore, who did Watchmen, and this was on ABC Wildstorm / DC Comics, and it got a second life at Top Shelf and Knockabout Comics between 2009 and 2019. I read the first couple of volumes, I've 1 and 2 specifically, and it was a great mishmash of all of these Victorian age heroes. And just once again, let's reiterate about the ages of comic books real quick. The golden age of DC Comics might be between 1938 and 1955, but according to the Overstreet Glossary, the Victorian age was between 1828 and 1883, and there was a platinum age between 1883 and 1938. So these characters such as Mina Murray, Alan Quatermain, Jekyll and Hyde, Captain Nemo, they were all on a super team in the early 20th century, and it was a really interesting approach at superheroics using these classic characters. And there was a very brutal scene in which Mr. Hyde dispatches the Invisible Man quite horrifically, and it's too terrible to be told here. You have to experience it to believe it, and it's harrowing for a comic book. It's very mature content as well. And but that was one of my, like, a quote unquote favorite Jekyll and Hyde stories, was from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic, not to be confused with the Sean Connery movie, which I passed on that because it looked horrible. But Jekyll and Hyde is part of cultural literacy. You know what Jekyll and Hyde is. You don't have to have read the story or have seen any of the many movies to know what Jekyll and Hyde is. Well, maybe today you might need a reminder, but I grew up in the 20th century, and Jekyll and Hyde is a cliche, where someone has two distinct sides, one being very good and one being downright evil. And Robert Louis Stevenson wrote this in 1886, and it is also what I wanted to get to. It's in the public domain, and that's got a big thing to do in comics, especially lately. We hear things about, will the estates of the original comics creators be able to receive a financial bounty from the publishers that are still making millions and millions, sometimes billions, Marvel movies, billions of dollars with these intellectual properties. But what does the public domain mean? When it comes to books, a public domain, and I'm reading this from the wiki, my Rich Evans voice. Rich Evans is one of the hosts of my beloved shows from Red Letter Media. Go check them out and give them a like and a subscribe. They're movie people and TV people, nerds and geeks. Wonderfully funny stuff. But when it comes to books, a public domain book is a book with no copyright. A book that was created without a license, or a book where its copyright expired or has been forfeit. In most countries, the term of protection of copyright expires on the first day of January, 70 years after the death of the latest living author. The longest copyright term is in Mexico, which has a life plus 100 years for all the deaths since 1928. A notable exception is the United States, where every book and tale published before 1927 is in the public domain. American copyrights last for 95 years for books originally published between 1927 and 1978, if the copyright was properly registered and maintained. That means you can, like Marvel and DC, can go back and apply to renew their copyrights for Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, etc., the whole gang. So there's always these issues of comic books, with comic books, about intellectual property and about compensation. And is it fair for the big companies to be reaping the rewards still when the original creators and their estate don't see much, of a windfall from that? And for example, the works of Jane Austen, Lewis Carroll, Makoto Adiasis, Olavo Bilac, and Edgar Allan Poe are in the public domain worldwide, as they all died over 100 years ago. Project Gutenberg, the Internet Archive, and Wikisource makes tens of thousands of public domain books available online as ebooks. So, so Jekyll and Hyde, you could make your own Jekyll and Hyde comic book. I might. I've also, I believe in Jekyll and Hyde as a pretty evident theme about addiction. And it's about, because what happened is Dr. Jekyll takes a drug and he turns into Edward Hyde. And under the influence of the drug, he has given himself permission to assume a new identity and live out his deepest, darkest fantasies. And having struggles with sobriety, my life, and seeing people around me with their own struggles and seeing people under the influence of alcohol and drugs, that is such a potent and a potent theme that holds till today, that Jekyll and Hyde has this staying power. And you know what? Do me a favor. Leave a comment in the comment section if you are a younger person. And do you know who Jekyll and Hyde is? Are you familiar with that? And do you still accept Jekyll and Hyde as relevant? Leave it a comment in the comment section. I would love to know what you think about this. And you know what? We've been talking comic books about the Golden Age, and we're going to be talking about comic books every day for the rest of the year. So tune in tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern U.S., and we'll find out who we're talking about when we turn the page tomorrow. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you could be so kind. I would love to earn your subscription. I talk about a lot of different things on my channel: cooking, spirituality, comic books, and I take cute videos of bunnies first thing in the morning before the sun rises. I'm a chef. I get to work by 6 a.m. My joke is I beat the sun to the time clock. And I see bunnies walking to and from the subway station, and they're the cutest thing in the morning. And I hear bird songs, and now I can identify different birds through their bird songs with a great app I got from Cornell University. And so I like having these nature moments in the morning. I like sharing that with you, and I want to create the kind of content that I want to see. So tune in and like and subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless. Namaste. Good luck, and we will see you tomorrow. See you in the funny pages, okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.